So let's make a formal introduction to our listeners, guys. Good afternoon, Jonas and Ulrich. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studio of Fairfax City. We are very humbled that Jonas Munk and Ulrich Schnauss accepted our invitation to our show. Hey, guys, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thank you, Claudio.
No problem, man.
Hello.
So let's start from the beginning. With everything that is going on, and whoever want to answer the question is okay, or the two of you. You know, with everything that is going on in the world with the pandemic, you cannot tour, you cannot go outside that much. People being died. Some people want to get the vaccine, some people do not. How is this affecting your creativity, your inability to tour and play and that kind of stuff?
Jonas, do you want to go?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, we already talked about the.
That's what I'm saying. More
from my perspective, in the last interview we did, but to be honest, I've been quite fine with this. Like financially, I'm not super dependent on touring a lot, thankfully. So from a financial perspective, this hasn't been that different from my normal modus operandi. So I've basically just been working on a lot of music and doing a lot of mixing and the type of stuff that I always do. So yeah, I've been quite comfortable with it so far, actually, to be honest.
Got you. What about you, Ulrich?
Yeah, it's similar for me, and yeah, probably similar for people who work like us in general. So people who are not making, let's say, like 80, 90, or even 100% of their income from gigging and touring. I'm kind of wondering, though, whether sort of in a more like mid to longer term perspective, we're probably going to see some negative impact from the pandemic situation as well, because I think obviously it's going to affect a lot of people negatively, and a lot of jobs are disappearing, people are being made redundant, and that naturally is not the best time to offer someone like a luxury product like a CD or a vinyl record. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if like in 2 or 3 years we'll see like a development where people who used to buy our records, for instance, where they have to think about it like 3 or 4 times before they decide to spend that money on luxury items such as that, really.
Yeah, well, now it's like a trend that, so as you see in the back, right, I have in this house like 4 different levels, and I have a lot of music. I was telling Jonathan, a lot of vinyl and CDs, and I keep on buying. I'm a computer engineer. I do this for fun, right? So, and we having like a trend now in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. People they don't want to buy physical things. You know, they go to Bandcamp and they download the digital format. But for me, I want to touch things. You know, I want to see a picture. You know, the album. I want to go to a concert where the artist can sign the autograph the item. So for me, it wouldn't make, you know, a different, where we have a different format now. They still want to collect things, and it appeals. But you're absolutely right. For some people that they don't have the means, may will disappear. And in your case, Ulrich, how old were you begin playing piano?
How old? Where was I? Huh?
Yeah, when you began playing piano.
I think it was a year before I started school, so I probably was like 6 or something like that. Yeah, 6 years old, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you came from like a musical family, or no? Were your dad, your mom?
No, I wouldn't really say that, but it's probably more like you know, like that generation of my parents. In a lot of cases of like German families, that was the first generation who had the opportunity to study, and so that they were very focused on sort of like moving up the social ladder, and for their children, they wanted to give their children the opportunities as well that they probably hadn't been given when they were young. And so I think my mother was generally very focused on me, but my sister as well, as like reading a lot of books and not just watching television, learning an instrument, you know, like all these sort of like typical things that are sort of like indicators or symbols for trying to achieve like a certain status or something. So I mean, in a way, I don't necessarily think that is the best reason to learn an instrument, really, because yeah, obviously it's got nothing to do with creativity. But in hindsight, I'm actually still, nevertheless, I'm quite grateful for it, because it gave me the opportunity to learn an instrument, which then became very helpful, obviously, in realizing sort of the musical ideas I had further down the line.
Yeah, I think the same for you, Jonas. I think you know, whether it, you know, learning something new, you know, it helped, whether it's an instrument or carpentry or whatever, it helped the brain to develop, you know, different areas in the brain, and having music, whether it's real music or piano or violin, it gives a new aspect in life, I suppose, and it's good. And for me, like I was telling Jonas, I don't play any instrument. I don't know how to read music, but I began. My dad, I was born in Chile, Ulrich, and in South America, and my dad, they have a lot of music, thousands of it. So he told me that I began listening to music when they took me back from the hospital, right, for to home, and he used to put all jazz and tango from Argentina. So I began listening to music when I was real, you know, baby, and then around 14 years old, I discovered, you know, rock and roll, and I felt, man, I really like the stuff, and I like jazz. So I began listening to, when I was 14, you know, Jean-Luc Ponty from France, Pat Metheny guitar, Peter Gabriel, Genesis, you know, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and I discovered Tangerine Dreams as well, and I fall in love with the music. It wasn't just electronic music or jazz or pop. It was all good music, you know. And depending on my mood of the day, I was listening to some of the early stuff from Peter Gabriel, or Genesis, or electronic, or pop, you know, like Pat Benatar, Blonde, all these people, Coldplay. Well, Coldplay didn't exist back in the day, but I developed an appreciation for music, and when I came to the United States to study, I began collecting music a lot, and then going to a lot of concerts. You know, it gives a lot of, for me, satisfaction when I go and see an artist, you know, playing him or her or the band live. You know, I know the songs very much, but they play different songs, they different version. One musician go back and forth. It's a different version. Sometimes they screw up, and but the chemistry with with the audience. You are uplifted, and then it's a beautiful thing, man. Listen to that music, so, and you develop an appreciation for that kind of stuff, man. I don't know the creative process when you and Jonas put an album together, and you go back and forth, and you go in your studio in London and mix some stuff. I don't know any of this, how the stuff work behind the scene, but having a product and listen to stuff, it's a beautiful thing, man. Music is I don't know, probably the most important thing that the human race has created, in my opinion.
Undoubtedly. Yeah.
It's the healing force of the universe, right?
Yeah, you know, mathematics of music probably is the language of the universe. Right? And I don't know, but it's a beautiful thing, man. You know, I'm glad you guys are doing well, but some artists depend, the sole income is touring, you know.
That's what I was
you know,
trying to say. No,
yeah, it's very tough. You know, some people need to get another job, right?
Yeah.
You know, get in a factory or on, you know, because they were depending on touring or playing every night, and for the last year or so, it's it have been very difficult, man. And all right, so we can take this, man. We can take this interview in so many directions, man, because you know, I have like a lot of questions about Tangerine Dream as well, and the two of you. So let me start from the you know, the two of you playing together. First of all, how you end up, guys? How you end up meeting? I mean, how you end up working together back in the day, back in what, 2011 or so?
Oh, I can't remember exactly, but we were part of the same circuit. Like Ulrich, he was releasing albums on city center offices, and I've done 2 or 3 albums on More Music, and they were kind of like a sister brother labels in Berlin back then. So I don't think we ever met like playing a festival or something, right, Ulrich? I think we just communicated via email. I think I probably dropped Ulrich an email at some point. Would you be interested in working on a few tracks or something? And I think that was probably quite early, like 2003 or so. Or maybe it was just like one of those random embarrassing emails, like asking him about what synthesizers he was using or something. Stupid stuff.
But I can't exactly remember when it was as well, and I can't remember who sent the first email. But I think the reason why I can't remember it is not just my admittedly rather terrible memory. I think it's also because what I do remember is that it was somehow like a strange synchronicity, because I know that we started interacting with each other at a point when I also had thought that Jonas would be a very interesting person to work with, because I had enjoyed his releases on More Music very much, and I kind of I recognized like an element in his music that I could relate to very much, a lot more than to most of the other stuff that was coming out at that point. And saying that despite the fact that there was loads of good music coming out on those 2 labels, but there was like I said, there was something in Jonas' music that had a particularly profound impact on me. And so yeah, just like Jonas said, since we were sort of part of the same family already, I guess it was a really natural thing to start working together, or at least to start some kind of exchange, some kind of communication, at least.
Yeah, I remember like listening to your first 2 records and just thinking, wow, I would love to play guitar and stuff like this. I think that was like the initial spark. Maybe we could, you know, collaborate on a track, or so maybe we can work on an EP. I don't think any of us thought about working on a full-length album back then. I think it was the initial spark was just, yeah, maybe we can work on a few tracks together. And back then, Ulrich was living in Kiel, in northern Germany, which is actually quite close to Odense, where I'm living. That's like a 3-hour drive or something. Yeah. So yeah, I think it just made total sense to do something.
To collaborate together. Yeah, that's good. I was able to listen to 4 albums for you guys. Passage, Asteroid, Eight Fragment of an Illusion, and then the first one, the album for 2011 that doesn't have a name. actually. And
I mean, that's kind of how we, like sometimes it's like to actually get something going, you need like an outside incentive, and that can be many things. Can be like an invitation to play a gig together, or in this case, it was basically the opportunity to start doing some library music. And when I had this, I got like an offer from a company to do like some library stuff for them, and I thought like, oh, this would be very useful, sort of like external nudge or extra incentive to just progress a bit more with the stuff I had started with Jonas. And so initially that was actually just like a fairly random collection of tracks with the sole purpose of being used for library music. But then it seemed like the response that we were getting for that music seemed to justify the idea to release it as a normal commercially available album as well. But I mean, that's the reason why it doesn't have a proper title, and so that was kind of like a starting point.
That's the point. And I like the cover too, and the letters. It's very, very well put together. I don't know who is the artist behind. I don't know if Jonas, you do that, or a friend of yours?
No. That was someone at Pedigree Cuts. And we probably should clarify the sort of mystery around the releases, because I mean the version that's on streaming services like on Spotify and Apple Music, that's just self-titled. It's called Ulrich Schnauss and Jonas Munk. That's the main album version. And then, like Ulrich said, there's several library music versions for use in television or whatever. And if you look on Discogs, there's like several titles. There's one from Japan or something, like a CD release called Emotion Meets Expression. There's one from the UK called Epic. But those are the library versions, which has a different track list. And so
like library music, they always need like sort of like an in-your-face word, which makes it easy for people who program the music at TV stations and so on to find like the right thing. And that's why then words like epic or I don't know, soundscapey or dreamy or whatever, like terms like that are being used for that. But it's probably not something that we would have chosen as an album title if it had been our own choice.
Yeah, sure. Out of that album with no name, for what I heard, for what I listened to in Spotify, Whaleless Memories and Shiroko, man, those are beautiful too, man. I think each one of them has like a 2 million hits or whatever, man. Is it hard for, so it's different for the kind of electronic music, because in a pop world, right, if you ask U2 for a number of a song, they will remember exactly the lyrics, and of course it has lyrics on it, and then they remember how the song came together. In your case, when you do things in tracks without singing for the most part in terms of electronic music, you remember those tracks? If I say Shiroko or Whaleless Memory, you remember?
Of course, yeah.
But I think that probably goes for both of us. I think maybe we both never thought about music so much in categories of like separating instrumental and vocal music, because I think as long as instrumental music has like a recognizable compositional element, I think it can be just as memorable as like a song that has like a vocal hook line. I mean, to be honest, you like, especially as a non-native English speaker, like at least for the first, I don't know, 12 years of my life, I listened to the voice primarily as an instrument anyway, because I didn't, and obviously I did not understand the lyrics anyway, and so I think that's that's never been such an important distinction for me. But I think, yeah, like I said, the main point is that I think we both try to do electronic music in a way where we see it as an outlet for like composed music and not just for tracks and like DJ tools or something like that. And therefore, I think that the memorability level, for me at least, doesn't depend so much on whether something has vocals and singing or not.
And your music, you guys' music, it brings a lot of emotion. It's something like electronic music does, right? Different. I like, I don't know, Pat Benatar or Blondie or Coldplay for different reasons, right? The upbeat or the rhythm, the guitar drift or whatever. But electronic music is very, you become like an introvert, and as you listen to stuff, you think about the past, your family, or your job, whatever. It brings a lot of emotion and memories back, to your head when you listen to electronic music. So it's a beautiful thing, man. You become, I don't know, melancholic, maybe is the correct word in English.
Oh yeah,
It's a beautiful thing, man. The other album, the Asteroid, and I think on Spotify only have 2 tracks. The Asteroid 2467. That's another beautiful piece, man. Unbelievable. Oh, bring me. I have listened to stuff, I don't know, 50 times, I think. It's a beautiful track, man.
I think that was probably also the most difficult one to get together, at least from a mix perspective, which was, of course, like that was Ulrich's job. But I think that really that was quite a challenge getting that together. And but I think it works.
How you guys, Jonas, remind me how you guys compose? So you're in Denmark, and Ulrich is in the UK, in London, right? So when you began doing some guitar samples, you sent to Ulrich. Ulrich sent you some
the
piano stuff. And
composition,
how a composition came together if you're in different countries?
Well, it's actually quite different, because the way we were working for the first 2 albums was different from the new one. Like early on, very often, maybe I would bring some sort of sketch over to Ulrich's, like the very first couple of tracks we did when Ulrich was still living in Kiel. I told you that last time I would come down and I'm playing some guitar, and Ulrich, he would maybe more have like a producer role building those tracks. Later on, it would be the other way around. Ulrich would have some sort of idea and I'd start playing on it. But I think for the new one, the new album is very much a more a collaborative effort from the very first step to the last, because with some of these tracks, and if I remember correctly, with a track like Asteroid, we'd actually just sit down and try to find some sort of like harmonic context to go into. We just jam a little bit, Ulrich on the piano, on the synthesizer, and me on the guitar, and we'd try to find some sort of like interesting harmonic area to build from, and maybe find a tempo, and that would be like the starting point. And from there, Ulrich would start building like a chord progression. I'd play something on top of that, and so on and so on. So with the new album, I think like every track was like very collaborative all the way.
Yeah, I got you.
I always think that's a really good way of actually and truly developing music together, because if you know that you're doing stuff with someone that you're on a similar wavelength with musically, then I think it really only takes a bit of patience until you will come up with something together. So let's say if we start playing together, just sort of like random stuff, improvising, and then after 20-30 minutes we'll maybe have like a first little chord sequence that we both like, then you keep repeating that and repeating it, and maybe another 15 minutes later an idea pops up like for a little variation of that theme, and then this way it just expands and expands. And I think, yeah, in the case of Asteroid, for instance, I think the sort of chordal foundation of that song, we probably wrote that in maybe like 3 or 4 hours of sitting together and just like, yeah, like I said, just constantly repeating and repeating what you had already settled on, and then trying to incorporate like another part and then repeating that as well, and then just like slowly building and moving on. No?
I got you. From the album Passage, I like 2 songs, also beautiful. Amaris and Spellbreaker. Breaker is also beautiful, and it brought too much emotion to me. You know, it's Passage is an album from 2017.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing too. A beautiful album, and I like, if you feel free to elaborate on these 2 tracks if you remember.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think Amaris was kind of like one of mine. Like, I think I brought the foundation. Like, I think it was just one of those tracks that I've been working on for some solo stuff, but I couldn't really get it to work. But I knew there was like a lot of potential in there. And I gave it to Ulrich, like, do you want to work on this? Do you think you can realize its potential? And thankfully, he agreed to. And I think it turned out really nice. So I think that's kind of like a rarity in all the stuff we've been doing together, because it's like the foundation, at least, is mine, and Ulrich is building on top of that. I think that's quite unusual, actually, but I really like the way that track turned out.
So I think Spellbreaker is a bit more like in line with a lot of the other stuff. I think we maybe it was like one morning or something where we just felt like we need like a more energetic, upbeat track today. I remember that we had this idea of doing something quite up tempo and energetic, and yeah, and I would actually, I can't say that I remember it exactly, but I would assume that maybe we started with something a little more simple, like that verse theme, repeated that, and then thought, okay, and now for the chorus we need some sort of like more odd changes. And I remember actually, when you that it was quite a lot of work, like placing in the chorus, like the guitar-y bits with all these strange changes on it as well. And I think that took us a while to figure out, also like a way how it sounds, sort of like how it shouldn't sound like complicated for complication's sake. You know, the idea was that it would have weird changes, but like in a way where it doesn't wear that on its sleeve, but it sounds sort of like natural and playful in a way at the same time. And that was, I think, the vibe that we were trying to capture with that one.
Yeah, that's a beautiful album. The other album is Eight Fragments of an Illusion. Of course, I like many tracks there, but just to mention one, the Return to Burlington. That's a beautiful piece too, man.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I think
it. That's one of the last tracks we did for the album, if I remember correctly. I think that was from the last session we did in London, and that's I think it's kind of like an interesting track on the album, because it's the only track on the new record that has something like beats. So all the other tracks are completely without beats. So I think, for me at least, it's a track that points in the direction of the 2 previous albums more than some of the other material, which is more experimental, to use a nasty word.
Is any plan from the 2 of you to, as the 2 of you or with another person, like a trio or whatever, tour together? Have you guys thought about doing a touring, or is there a possibility?
When we were completing the record, I actually wanted to try to set up like a London gig, but yeah, for obvious reasons, that didn't happen. But it's still something that I'd really like to do at some point. I don't know whether we could do a full tour for logistical reasons, but it was especially because on the album there's two tracks on it that we recorded live in my kitchen, and that was sort of like the first time where we were doing improvisation in a way where it didn't have like a functional role of like saying, okay, we're gonna improvise now with the purpose of writing writing a song together, but we're gonna improvise in a way where we try to create certain atmospheres and not necessarily leading into like a writing process. And since that worked out really well too, at least in my opinion, I think that would make it even easier to realize like a live performance, and I think that would be a nice thing to do at some point.
Plus when in the fall with the touring start happening, you're going to get busy already with Tangerine Dream as well, right? I noticed, I went to the website and you play in a gig in London, so I think it's September 29th.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm not gonna keep on playing live with GD because like those last 3 years have shown me basically that I'm not 25 anymore, and to have at least two projects which require a lot of gigging, so my solo stuff and TD, that was just a bit too much, and so I'm not gonna keep on touring with GD, but yeah, but I think at the moment it's really primarily more that the pandemic situation that that didn't allow Jonas and me to play a show together. But yeah, I'm hoping that once things are a little more back to normal, that we can set something up. Yeah, whether it's going to be in London or somewhere else, we'll see. I'm actually, at the moment, I'm thinking about maybe going to Hamburg for quite a while, which would also be an advantage for that, because it's closer to where Jonas lives. So yeah, that could be an option as well. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you guys need to let me know, man, so I can fly to. Hopefully, I can fly and see you guys live. Man. And you, in your case, Jonas, well, you're 25, you know, so you're doing a lot of stuff, man. You play with Ulrich, you have the other people that you play with Michigan, and, and you are involved in a lot of projects. So it's good, man, to have an outlet to do different things. Man. Is there a possibility, and you have like a trio as well that you can play, or?
Oh, I have the rock band as well,
band, yeah,
which is sort of inactive at the moment. We did an album last year, and we haven't really toured with that album for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think we'll play a few shows in late summer, early fall. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe it'll be active again.
Yeah, I noticed in the website, in Azure Vista record, there are like other artists as well. I was speaking to some songs. There's very good stuff there. I think there's very good stuff. The band, I think, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the name, but the one in Michigan, or then there is two artists, and it's very, very good stuff, man.
There's a couple of American artists as well.
Yeah.
Auburn, Lull from Michigan, and one of those guys is the guy that I'm doing Billow Observatory with, which is sort of this ambient duo. There's another American trio called Dawn Chorus and the Infallible C. They're from Indiana, someplace like that.
Indiana, yeah.
And there's another American thing coming out, but I don't want to reveal that yet. We still have to wait 3 or 4 months for the vinyl, but that's going to be the next one. So
you manage the whole Azure Vista record, or the two of you do?
no,
No,
that's me. But it's quite a small catalog. It's only 11 releases so far. So it's and that's over the course of 4 years. So it's not like I've been like really busy managing all these artists, but it's slowly getting there. And yeah.
Are you selling a lot of stuff all over the world? CDs, vinyl, that kind of stuff. People buy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So
I'm getting orders from.
I'm going to be in the list too, because I wanna get some of the records as well. It's a lot of very good artists. I wanna get the catalog. Let me ask a couple, if you don't mind, to Ulrich, a couple of questions. For we can cover a little bit of Tangerine Dream, and I listened last night. Well, I have this album as well, but I was listening to the Faraway Train Passing By. It's for 2001. And I really like two tracks there, Passing By, and the other one I have no idea how to pronounce it in German. It's called Noodle Mouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, that's very good stuff, man. You were very young when you released the first stuff. You were like 18 years old, right? I'm going back to the album. I don't know if I think it's called Police in Car with Headphone in 1995. You were a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to elaborate in that album, the Faraway Train Passing By, is the one that with that you became sort of famous, so to speak, that it opened a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, I mean that's the first thing I think I did that was that was well received, and I think in hindsight it makes sense as well, because like I think everything that I had done before that was, I think like it is for so many people, like when you start making music, you start by copying what people have done, whose music you enjoy, or you sort of remain within like the framework of like a particular genre. And Faraway Trains was maybe the first thing I'd ever done where I did something which was just about what I wanted to hear, really, but without having any restrictions or any rather narrow frameworks in my head. No, it's basically just maybe like the first time where I was just making music simply, and not sort of still in a process of learning and trying to educate myself about how certain software or synthesizers, etc., how that all works.
I got you another album. It's famous to me. It's A Strangely Isolated Place, where you have On My Own and Monday Paracetamol. Those are beautiful tracks, man, as well, man. Those are very good stuff, man. Where's were the two of you listening to see what's happening in Berlin? Berlin being the capital of electronic music, there are so many good musicians there. So were you guys listening? You knew, for example, in case of Jonas, you knew who I don't know, Tangerine Dream was, or Peter Baumann, to mention a couple of names, that who they were when you were like in high school,
Well, Tangerine Dream, I always knew a little bit because my dad, he had a couple of records, but I wasn't familiar with like the more underground stuff until much later. So
yeah, it's very good. I have Tangerine Dream. I think I mentioned to you before, like at least 40 or 50 CDs from them. They have so much stuff. The first 4 albums were great, unbelievable, and then they went into doing soundtracks, and then they did a lot of commercial stuff, and it's very different. That was very different. That was before Ulrich joined the band, and the early stuff with Tangerine Dream was unbelievable. I mean, it was, was so very, very well done. And as you know, in German, there are so many good electronic musician, man. There's a lot of very good people, especially in Berlin, playing very good music, man. Are you guys planning on? Are you guys working like in a new record? Have some new tracks that you want to release in the summer? Is that the plan?
Oh, no. I think at the moment I've just been finishing stuff for the past long time.
Yeah.
So I haven't really started anything yet. So yeah, the Kausasui album that came out like in fall last year, that was a really big project.
Yeah.
8 Fragments of an Illusion, of course, a really big project for me. And there's a new Billow Observatory album being pressed at the moment. But since all the vinyl factories are operating so slowly at the moment, I think that's going to be like an October release. So
Right.
for me, it's almost like a clean slate. It's like the first time in a very long time that I'm not in the process of working on several albums. So
Yeah.
that's very new for me.
And then what about the Ulrich? You are not only doing your own stuff, but you're working with other artists, right? As a record engineer and mixing, and right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar for me. I mean, at least sort of at the moment, what was really good, ironically, actually, about the lockdown is that it also gave me the opportunity for the first time in many years, maybe, to catch up with my to-do list. And yeah, the first result of that was that we finished, that Jonas and I finished that album, and then I've done 2 records so far with a friend from Northern England, Mark Peters, and we finished like a third collaborative album, which I think is now scheduled for early autumn release. And yeah, and there's another collaborative project that I've nearly finished. And I mean, eventually I'd really like to make some more progress with new solo stuff as well, that I've been also working on for a while now. And then every now and then, like smaller things pop up as well. Like I do a bit of music for advertising sometimes, or remixes, and yeah. So, but yeah, I think the good thing is really that I feel like for the first time, maybe in almost like 10 years at the moment, I'm sort of like on an okay level, and not like running after like a mountain of tasks, and I'm always like thinking, oh, how on earth am I gonna finish all that? So that's quite good.
And people like me sending email to artists, right? Can we do an interview? You're very busy as it is, and so on top of that, looking your life and emails and different people that want to collaborate with you guys. It's like a never-ending.
Yeah, I'm
like
not
a
quite
to-do list
sure.
is growing and growing.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's an age thing or something, but I do realize that like 20 years ago, I was a lot better sort of handling different things at the same time. So like 20 years ago, it was a lot easier for me to sort of being reasonably reliable, responding to emails as well. Nowadays, I often feel like in order to mix a record or finish music, I need to just completely sort of shut down and concentrate on that. And I find it sometimes really hard to then switch into office mode, you know, and
Sure.
just answer emails. I don't know why that is. It's weird. It certainly wasn't like that. Yeah, quite some time ago. But yeah, that's how I feel like at the moment, at least. I think yeah. So I think at some point I just want to try to have a longer actual break as well. Like maybe I just need to sort of recharge my battery in general a bit, so that I can I don't get I don't know, exhausted or stressed out so easily. Maybe that's the thing also. I think I've never actually been on like a like a proper holiday in my whole life. So that's kind of like something that I definitely want to do at some point, you know, just like go away for 2 weeks, maybe with a big pile of books and just read, and no computer and
no phone, no computer, nothing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's something that I'd really like to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ulrich, you should do like what totally normal people are doing, and go to Ibiza for 2 weeks and just drink alcohol and do stupid things. I think that.
No, but we talked about this before. I think if we could settle on a compromise of going to Bornholm rather than Ibiza, then I'd be totally in for that.
Where's the other place? No, Ibiza. Where's the other place?
Yeah, Bornholm is like a Danish island in the Baltic Sea, and there's like 2 or 3 very specific things about it. Like, first of all, it's got like one of the finest sand in the world. Like, you know, that the sand that is being used for these clocks, you know, like where the sand runs from the bottom, runs from the top down to the bottom. Like some of that sand is sourced there, and also it's within the Gulf Stream. So despite the fact that it's in Northern Europe, it has like a very, very mild, very, very nice, comfortable climate the whole year through. So it's always like between 16 and 24 degrees. So never too hot, never too cold, and very, very pleasant.
Yeah, a lot of several, actually, now that you mentioned Ibiza, I have talked to several kind of electronic musician guys. They go on vacation to Ibiza, or they have house on Vista. It's kind of very famous spot for electronic people there, man.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Michael Honing and the other one that Peter Michael Hamill. Both. Oh, Claudia, we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. I'm with my family in Ibiza or whatever, or going to Ibiza or coming back, and it's a fame, you know, for the electronic people, electronic musicians. It's a favorite spot, man, to go down there, man. So I only have another question. So where you guys, for the audience, where they can feel free to mention Jonas, the website, and then Ulrich, where the people can buy and listen to your music.
Oh, I don't know for Ulrich, but they should check out the Azure Vista Records Bandcamp. I think that's pretty stocked at the moment. You can still find a bunch of CD and vinyl there. I don't really have a proper website for what I do besides that. So that would be my main recommendation.
Yeah.
For people to check out.
And then are you guys doing well in? You get revenues from Spotify and Bandcamp? You guys do much better, right? Yeah. The Spotify thing, you need like 1 million hits to get $10 or something.
The thing is, like, Bandcamp is, I don't know, it's probably a little bit overrated how many sales you're generating on Bandcamp. I mean, it's the numbers are quite small, but of course they're paying better per sale than Spotify does per stream. But obviously you're getting much more streams on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever compared to the amount of sales on Bandcamp. So yeah, you can't really compare those two. They're completely different things.
I think with the Spotify discussion, it always depends on what aspect of it you're looking at, and I think sometimes people confuse things a bit. So, like, for instance, when some musicians complain that they don't get any money or not enough money from Spotify streams, and there's some people out there who say, why are you moaning all the time? There is actually income derived from Spotify. And I think that the misunderstanding is, I think if you just see it as a thing of its own, then there is nowadays more income coming from Spotify than it used to be the case like a couple of years ago, because I think it is correct that the rates actually have gone up. However, I think the problem is also, if you look at the bigger picture a bit, is that initially the hope and the promise was to musicians that something like Spotify could, at least to a degree, compensate a little for the loss of CD and record vinyl sales. And obviously, if you look at it that way, even though the rates may have increased a little, it's really just a drop of water on a hot stone. So yeah, it depends on which aspect you're discussing. I think I'm still hoping that maybe eventually, like a way will appear how streaming can be done, where the income distribution is a little bit more in favor of musicians, and yeah, like I said, helps a little bit more effectively compensating for the collapse of income from physical product sales. But yeah, I think that's probably still going to take a long time, and it's going to be a stony road, because there's lots of conflicting interests involved. I think if that's not a conspiracy theory, I've read that major record labels hold, or some major record labels hold, big shares in Spotify, which obviously is going to make it very unlikely that, at least when it comes to that platform, the rates are going to be adjusted in favor of musicians. Also, I mean, that's the musicians' fault as well. Like, musicians are notoriously bad organized, and I'm not really used to this idea of like uniting as a pressure group and fighting for common interests. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's errors, problems, mistakes on everyone's behalf as well. No? And I mean, that's probably, I don't know if any musicians are listening to this. I always think that's, in our times, that's probably the most important lesson to learn. No? But like without sort of overcoming this sort of like very competitive attitude and readjusting ourselves to the idea that even though you may think that your band is better than someone else's band, it's still a good idea to overcome that and to fight with that other band together for a generally better situation for musicians. It's going to be very, very tough and very unlikely that battle can be won.
Yeah, yeah, but the other thing in Spotify, you get a lot of exposure, right? People like me, right, go to Spotify to look for band, to look for new bands, to listen to your music, right? And then hopefully that will, if the people that didn't know Ulrich and didn't know Jonas can go to, I don't know, Amazon or Bandcamp and then buy your music, and then, you know.
Yeah,
kind of
that's true.
Advertising where people can buy it. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah,
or not, but.
that's totally true. And I've been hearing that argument always and constantly ever since the whole internet thing started. I would say, though, I think it needs to be approached with a little bit of caution, because as you just outlined, like, exposure is nice and good, but it only really helps you surviving as a musician if it actually leads to that second step that you just described, that people actually then go to Amazon and buy something there. And I think what we shouldn't underestimate as well is that there's a bit of a generational problem. You know, like, people at my age or at your age, I think that they're still quite likely to do that, you know, but I think there's now at least 2 generations after us who've grown up in a way where that step is not necessarily connected to the exposure thing, and they may like something and stream it on Spotify all the time, but that's where it stops as well. It doesn't lead to a situation where they think like, oh, I want to own that particular piece of music, not even an MP3, you know, just totally totally leaving it to streaming is actually fine. And in a way that if that's the reality of the way how things are, I do accept that. I don't think it helps much if I'd be moaning about that the whole time. But that's what I was trying to say earlier on. If it is that way, then we just have to come up with a new model as well of ensuring that you can actually earn and at least like somehow sufficient income from making music, because I think otherwise in like 20-30 years time we'll have like a musical landscape where there will be only people doing this for a living who can do it because they can afford it as a luxury thing, you know. And I think that would be a shame, because I think there's obviously a lot of talent also among musicians who did not grow up in rich families, in rich countries or whatever. And if we lose all those voices, that would be a big shame. I mean, I can see that in London already, you know, like if I go to like those quarters of the cities where you would expect that musicians are hanging out, like the overall demographic nowadays is very different than to 15 years ago. You know, like 15 years ago, you probably had like the son of a dentist or lawyer from South London, but you also had the daughter of like a working class family from Leeds or whatever. And yeah, that has narrowed a lot more. And yeah, I think we just have to be aware of that consequence, because I mean, obviously, yeah, coming from a rich background doesn't mean that you're more talented than someone who's coming from a poor background, and therefore I don't think that's a very good selection criteria. No? So.
Well, there's many venues, and I'm quite sure that in Denmark too, and in London too, you know, in the poor areas. If you are good at what you do, it will difficult at the beginning, right? Because you don't have a record label, nobody knows your dad, you know, and so, or your mom. But if you are good, I think it will eventually you will get a break, and then you will be able to, you know, release a record, tour, start playing in a little cafe, and then from there a small theater, and then, you know, take it from there. I suppose, you know, the world will be very impressive if only the rich people have opportunity, you know.
I understand your point, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, if we're talking about like mainstream pop music, for instance, I think that'll always be possible, because even with the internet, that market is big enough to create. If you have a successful record, it'll create enough revenue as that it is like a profitable thing to do. But if we're talking about niche genres, let's say like 20 years ago, like a successful or reasonably successful electronica album was probably something that sold, let's say like 60, 80, 100,000 copies worldwide. Nowadays, I think could probably say that say like if you sell 3,000-4,000 copies worldwide, that's already a pretty good result. And the problem with that is then even if you have a success in one of those niche genres, it's just not enough, because that market is not big enough, as that it creates enough income to sustain that whole thing. So I mean, there's some genres are hit even a lot harder, even like let's say like more experimental genres of like dance music, like drum and bass, for instance. if it is a success there to sell like 500, 600, 700 vinyl records, and that's actually a successful record, that simply means that, yeah, it's well and good to be successful. But if being successful means that you're still not earning any money from it, it will also mean that regardless of how talented you are, sooner or later you'll have to start thinking, well, I probably have to get a proper job now.
Go to school, and
yeah. And it's like that in many of those niche genres, no? And I think that's the main problem that I see. That going back to the beginning, that mechanism of like thinking that exposure leads to becoming well known or famous or whatever, and that then again leads to a respective level of income. That chain doesn't work anymore, and it may not create big problems in areas like mainstream pop music, R&B, or hip hop or whatever, but because those markets are so big that even if you only have 10% of that market left, it's still enough to feed a lot of all those mouths. But if you're talking about genres which were already small genres, and if you reduce that to 10%, then it just means even if you have a hit record in that genre, it's just not enough. No,
I understand, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, that's at least on the radios, right? What I try to do, right? All my radios are free, and I have a radio just dedicated to electronic music, so. And I try to do that. I pay for every server for the music. I still buy a lot of music from different artists all over the world, and I'm playing very good music for free, where people can, listen very good music 24 hours a day, no advertising, no social media, nothing. You can, you go to electronic music, you can listen to Jonas music, Ulrich music, the collaboration that Ulrich did with Thorsten, Tangerine Dream, and so on and so forth. It's a lot of. And it's free for the listener 24 hours. I don't charge anything. And because I like to buy physical things, I still buy a lot of music.
Yeah. But that's what I was trying to say. I think we're different generations as well. Yeah, and I'm also, and maybe I should clarify this to avoid misunderstandings. I'm not talking so much about myself. I consider myself very lucky because I'm doing okay, and I mean, at least as far as I can look into the future, maybe like the next 2 or 3 years, I think I'm gonna be all right, But I'm more thinking about people like me that are now like 20 years old and that are starting this, and I kind of wonder how they are gonna be able to start and even more importantly, maintain careers in a niche genre. And I already know examples of like very talented people who are sort of like 23, 25, 27 years old now. And some of them are giving up, because I mean, I was really lucky in the way that I started at a point when things hadn't gone so bad already. I'm still sort of like benefiting from the days of faraway trains and isolated place a lot as well. But I do know if I would have started that whole journey now, it would have been a lot more difficult. No? And I think eventually we will have to think about ways how we can ensure that there is like some kind of sustainable future for people from those younger generations as well, because otherwise we're just going to lose a lot of great music, that'd be a shame.
I totally agree with Ulrich, because like a lot of the young people now that are super talented and they're very dedicated to what they do, but I don't think for them, if you're 20 years old today or you're 25, for them it's not really an option to go deeply into like composing or recording or all the other aspects, like become a really good recording engineer working in studios. That's you're not going to go down that road today. 20 years ago, when I was like in my late teens, that still seemed like a viable option to go into doing music seriously. And I'm talking about all the aspects of doing music. It still seemed like a viable option to get into electronic music, for example, and take that seriously, or get into studio production or whatever. I mean, the young people today, I don't think for them it's really something they would even consider doing like professionally, or like dedicate themselves to on the same level, because I think for them it can only be a hobby, something to spend their time on when they're done with all the important stuff in their lives. So I totally agree with Ulrich on this aspect, because I think it's such a shame that it doesn't seem like a viable option for young people today to really get into it to that degree.
Yeah, the young people, I suppose, they will need to go to school or get a job, and then kind of do music part-time on the side when they have time, because they know that they're not going to make a living.
Exactly.
And I think that's a shame, not because I'm lazy or something, and I don't know, I'm thinking like, I don't want to get a job, and but it's much more because I think making music and sort of becoming better at it and developing hopefully something like a unique voice as well. It just requires time. Like, time really is the main thing here. I've never needed much money, and I never wanted much money even. But what I always wanted, though, and that was always my main concern about being forced to have like a normal job on the side, is that it just would take so much time, and I knew that if I wouldn't be in a position to dedicate all that time to making music and becoming better at it, then that would seriously harm my sort of like creative development as well. No, and that's something that really saddens me when I see people who are quite similar to me, but like 15, 20 years younger, and it's just very clear at the moment that they will, despite the fact, even though that their stuff may be popular, but because of the economic situation, they will not be granted a situation in which they can develop their skills and their ideas as far as they would want to.
Got you, man. That was a very, very interesting conversation. I'm quite sure that we can do like a part 2, part 3, part 4, and talk about music, which I love it, and
actually, maybe one. Sorry, I don't want to waffle on too much.
But, yeah, no, it's okay.
But just it goes actually back to something that you described. You talked about Berlin at several points having been something a little bit like the capital of electronic music.
Yeah.
Why was that the case? Was the case because after World War II, Berlin was a completely fucked up city economically, also because it was divided, which meant there were like no major industries, hardly any proper jobs. And it was basically a city in which only very old people lived who didn't want to move away anymore after having spent their whole life there, and loads of very, very young people. And that's why the rents, for instance, were super cheap, because like all the people in the middle were not there and were not taking up space. And so you could rent like a flat for something like, I don't know, 150 marks a month, like a super huge flat. And that's why people like Edgar, Klaus Schulze, Manuel Göttingen, like all these famous people, that's why they all came to Berlin, and why it was possible to be so creative there and to develop all these ideas, because there was no economic pressure. I mean, if you move to Berlin now, for 250 or 150 marks, you would not even get a parking space, you know, forget it. So if I was, let's say, if I was like a young Edgar or a young Klaus Schulze today, I could probably still move to Berlin, but I certainly wouldn't be in an environment there where I could just like freely develop ideas and try new things, you know, like I'd constantly have to have at the back of my mind the economic pressure of like paying the rent, you know, and surviving in a city, which is a lot tougher. And obviously that goes for all major cities, you know, like New York, London, like none of these cities, everyone's just pushing into the cities, you know, and the city generally is not like a space anymore where you can go as a young person to experiment and to try things and also to fail. You know, like if you go to the city in our times, you have to be very determined, very driven, and you have to make sure that you earn enough money that you can sustain that lifestyle. No?
London, obviously, where you are, Ulrich, is very, very expensive to begin with, you know, and you know, and then I don't know if Ulrich, you have kids or family, but in the case of Jonas have a little two kids, right? So it's a difficult decision. Well, should I be a musician? Should I not be? I want to get married, whatever. Can I make enough money for my mom, for my family to survive, or pick a different profession, whatever, you know? It's always that. For me, as like I mentioned at the beginning, I have done okay in my life. I'm an engineer and did a couple of master degrees and do other stuff. So I did save enough to put this radio together and to interview great musicians, you guys. You know, I don't make any money off the radios. You know, I don't play any instrument. I don't know how to read music, and so it is my passion is the consumer, listening to great artists that like like yourself, man. And I also I like Ulrich that you mentioned Klaus Schulze. Klaus Schulze, I want to try to interview him, and he's not in very good health, so it would never.
Yeah, it hasn't been for a while.
It hasn't been for a while. I talked to a couple of people, and with Manuel Goshin, I'm trying to work out a time where we can do an interview as well. So it's
that
a lot of great musicians. Those people. All right, of course. And the famous what's called E2 E4 album that he has done.
I'd love to hear a Manuel King interview. I'd love to hear that. So I think you should do that.
Well, I'm waiting. I sent an email. He's out of Berlin at the moment, and hopefully the person who managed all the emails and stuff like that, he told me I need to ping him in a couple of weeks. And it's another person that definitely I want to interview from Tangerine Dream, Yoshiko. I think Yoshiko doesn't speak English as well, so she told me I would need the kind of the question ahead of time, so she can use a translator and be prepared, and also Paul Frick also, and Jerome. I pinged Jerome. Hopefully he will get back to me, and so I want to interview everybody, man. And I have interviewed, if you look to the radio, all the old, so I speak German musicians from the 70s and 80s, and there's a lot of very good artists out there, man. And electronic music people. Very well. Well, thank you very much, Jonas, Ulrich. Definitely, I will send you separate email to you guys because I'm very interested in buying some of your music, and definitely Jonas for the catalog. I want to get a copy of everything that you
of course, yeah. Just send me your address, and I'll
send it. And
see what I have here.
And then I the same with you, Ulrich. I'm trying to get a hold of the early work that you did when you were 18 years old. I think the Police in Car with Headphone.
Yeah.
And then here. That stuff is not anywhere, man. I need to.
That's a classic.
Yeah. You were, I think Ulrich was.
I think I have a copy somewhere.
Man, I cannot find the stuff. I look at Amazon, I look at eBay. They're not, maybe this cogs I can find somewhere, but hopefully, we can do an interview, version 2 of this interview. We can topic, and I would love to one day, see you playing live. You, Jonas, well, if I'm happy to be in Denmark, definitely I will let you know. And Ulrich, if you are in London in the fall, definitely will, take you out to dinner. We can, we can get some German beer as well in London, man. Go for a couple of beers. Okay.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm really hoping to tour in the US again at some point. That's something I'd really like to do. So.
That would be great, man.
Fingers crossed.
All right, well, great. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. I will send you a link with the interview, and I'm, looking forward to hearing from you back, and then maybe we can do another reunion down the road.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Ciao.